I wouldn't even guess. I don't. It's they say 20 injured, but nobody has really given you a fatality notice in Parkland, in Florida school outside of Boca. What's the name of the town? Parkland, Florida, which is north of Boca. And the suspect is in custody. So there's a picture of the suspect right there going into a police car. So he is in custody. No further details at the moment. We'll keep it posted. Maybe, hopefully, not as disastrous as it appeared it could have been, say, 25 minutes ago. Here's Mark in Maryland. He's on Mad Dog Unleashed. Mark, good afternoon. How are you today? What do you have for me?
Hey, Chris, pretty good. Yesterday a lady called up about something about the old-time players, in the baseball.
Yeah, it was it was a call that we were comparing the old-time player to the new-time player, yes.
Yeah.
Not one of Eddie's best screening jobs, let's put it that way. Go ahead, you may continue.
No, it's good because, I was thinking, when you look at those old guys back then in the teens and when Ty Cobb and them played, you notice how old some of those guys looked. I mean, that travel must have been, and their lifestyle, those guys looked like they were 60 years old when they were 40.
Well, it was, listen, in those days, baseball is a ruffian sport.
Right.
They were not necessarily the baseball player looked on favorably by the American public. That kind of changed a little bit with Christy Matheson, because he was a college grad, went to Bucknell. I don't know if he was a college guy. I think he was. He went to Bucknell, and that kind of changed the perception of it. But the baseball player back in the first part of the 20th century were very ruffian in origin, and they were they were looked on that way. They had a hard edge to them, and it wasn't necessarily looked on as a great occupation either. A lot of people did not want, look at DiMaggio's family. A lot of people did not want you to be, a lot of parents did not want their children to grow up to be baseball players, that's for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think of all the major sports there, football, basketball, and baseball, of all the ones, I think the baseball players, those old guys probably could have still played, nowadays, I would think, whereas the football, some of those guys wouldn't have made it, I don't think.
The baseball players could have played. The football player, the size, the physicality of it is entirely different. The baseball player, Ty Cobb would be great today. That's all there is to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned DiMaggio, and I remember when you were having the discussions on the Hall of Fame. If you go back and look in the 50s and the voting, DiMaggio didn't make it in on his first time. I think he got in on his third. He got beat out by Rabbit Moranville and some of those guys.
I think in 1950, I think in 55 or 56. So it wasn't his first. He was not a. I think it was his second year on the ballot, not the first. But in those days, Mark, the balloting was a little different. They didn't necessarily do it every year. They were not nearly as organized. They didn't have a January date. The balloting in the old days for the Baseball Hall of Fame was completely different than it is today.
Yeah, it was. I was surprised to see that. DiMaggio of all people. You would think he's the automatic first ballot guy, but you look at some of those other elections. There's some other bad ones too. The ones in the 50s, if you check it out, it's bad.
Oh, very bad. And Connie Mack had a lot to do with that. A lot of the guys got in via the executive committee, and that was a mess. Travis is in Rhode Island, and he's aboard. He's on Mad Dog Unleashed. Hello, Travis. How are you today?
Chris, how are you? Always love calling in. Terrible tragedy as always in Boca. At least they caught they apprehended the felon here. They didn't take his life. Maybe we can shed some light on this.
Oh, he didn't take his own life, one or the other.
Yeah, didn't take his own life or wasn't shot down, whatever the case is. At the end of the day, Chris, nothing changes if nothing changes in terms of the shootings.
Yeah, this is how many? I think we've had 18. There's been 18 school. Oh, how many is it? 6? Okay, 18 shootings in schools in America in the first 6 weeks of the new year. That is hard to believe. 18 shootings, whether it's a middle school, a high school, whatever it might be, whatever the definition of a school shooting would be, there has been 18 of them in 6 weeks. That's 3 a week. That is mind-boggling how many there's been. Go ahead. Go ahead, Travis. Fire away. Let me hear. All right. We lost Travis, unfortunately. Tony in Dallas, and he's with us here. He's on Mad Dog Unleashed. We say hello. Tony, good afternoon. How are you today?
One of the best shows that you had was after Sandy Hook. and you argued and argued with a lot of gun owning. I'll never forget that call you had with a truck driver, and you all yelled at each other. And there was a glimmer of hope then as they're taking body bags of kids out of that school that maybe something would change with gun control. But unfortunately, it hasn't. And it's almost going to be like Social Security and health care. It'll never get addressed. It'll never really get addressed, and it'll never get fixed. That's just one comment. The second comment is I wanted to ask you about. You just better pray that some lunatic with guns at his disposal doesn't show up at your school. Doesn't show up at your school. Bottom line. I agree. The thing on you were completely other topic. You talked about The Darkest Hour. I think it was yesterday.
Right, 2 days ago.
It's interesting your take that you could never. One bad thing about the movies you couldn't understand.
I had a problem with it. Yes, the language.
I did too. Now I wanted to ask you on books. Did you read the Roy Jenkins biography on Churchill? Did you read The Last Line? Which one of those did you read?
I have The Last Line. I have not read that. I did read the Candace Millard book last year that she wrote about Churchill escaping the Boer War. Pretty good. Not great. She's written better books. Good historian, but
I think the Last Line. The Last Line is probably the better one. I did read the Roy Jenkins one. And as far as movies go, Chris, when you do see the post, it'd be interesting to get your take. The Katharine Graham biography is also really good, and the portrayal of Katharine Graham in that movie, I just thought was excellent. I understand why a lot of people don't really gravitate to that movie, especially now, but I thought that the story that was told in that movie with the Pentagon Papers, I just thought it was really good. You need to go see that.
I will. It's a must. I agree. We continue. Good to have you with us. 22 after the hour here on Mad Dog Unleashed.